if I'm cooking, I'm losing money with the money that I could buy pizza for. And if life gives you pizza, you're gonna take it, dude. You're gonna take it, dude.
New subscription.
There you go.
Received. Class 2 access granted.
Spam me later. I'm losing money with the money that I could buy pizza for. And if life gives you pizza, you're gonna take it, dude. You're gonna take it, dude.
New subscription.
There you go.
Received. Class 2 access granted.
Spam me later. I'm losing money with the money that I could buy pizza for. And if life gives you pizza, you're gonna take it, dude. You're gonna take it, dude.
New subscription.
There you go.
Received. Class 2 access granted.
Spam me later. I'm losing money with the money that I could buy pizza for. And if life gives you pizza, you're gonna take it, dude. You're gonna take it, dude.
New subscription.
There you go.
Received. Class 2 access granted.
Spam me later. I'm losing money with the money that I could buy pizza for. And if life gives you pizza, you're gonna take it, dude. You're gonna take it, dude.
New subscription.
There you go.
Received. Class 2 access granted.
Spam me later. I'm losing money with the money that I could buy pizza for. And if life gives you pizza, you're gonna take it, dude. You're gonna take it, dude.
New subscription.
There you go.
Received. Class 2 access
I look out upon humanity and see only a feast. Is it not enough for Noxus to be strong? The old wounds ache. They are reminders. You lack discipline. We are at war. Do not forget it. If you insist on dying, diplomacy is a subtle art. When their lives flash before their eyes, summon it. A petty squabble for pettier men. And to think they called me a cripple. I could kill them all, but it would be far crueler to show them that I am right. It is not the visions that haunt me, but what I do not see. it not enough for Noxus to be strong? Destiny marches, like any man. Shoot off a leg or two. I could kill them all, but it will be far crueler to show them that I am right. After the battle, the ravens feast. A new vantage is more advantage, I A mind's I have killed more men with words than by my plan. Not try my patience. Destiny marches. The right to rule held in my hand. A petty squabble for petty. Sacrifices must be made. It is not the visions that matter. I do so enjoy displaying things to produce. Try to die with dignity. They expect me to play fairly. We aren't even playing the same game. This will be my offering. their lives flat.